everybody. Thank you for joining us today for the Ask the Expert seasonal staffing discussion with a focus on H-2B and J-1 visas. Before we get started, I want to go over a few housekeeping items. If you have any questions during today's webinar, please enter those in the questions panel on the right-hand side of your screen. We will address those at the end of the call. If we run out of time for questions, I'll provide Keith's contact information via email, and you can reach out to him. I'm going to read a quick disclaimer. This webinar is being recorded, and we will share the recording with everybody after the webinar and on the FRLA YouTube channel. So before we get started, the information provided here is for educational purposes, and FRLA does not warrant or endorse any particular provider. FRLA is prohibited from providing specific legal, financial, or accounting advice. The information represented here is not intended as such. FRLA encourages businesses to consult qualified, competent advisors in these fields to explore their specific situations. The webinar is being recorded for future use by the association and other industry webinars or members. Your participation in the call is deemed to be your consent to the recording. So now that we got those housekeeping items out of the way, I'd like to introduce Keith Pabian with Pabian Law.
All right, thanks, Ashley. Hi, everybody, and thank you so much for having us. It is really an honor and a privilege to be able to speak to FRLA and all of you. And I know that staffing, to say the least, is a massive problem right now. So what I'm going to do today is really try to help all of you understand ways that you can employ foreign nationals, as well as I want to spend some time for those that use the two visas that we're going to spend some time talking about, which is H-2Bs and J-1s, understanding where things are right now, especially if you're an organization that's considering using them. I think that might really help you to understand if it's worth pursuing. Before we start, just a little bit about me. Again, my name is Keith Pabian. I'm based up in Massachusetts, but it's funny, we have most of our clients weirdly down in Florida. So Florida is near and dear to my heart, but our law firm is very much national in scope and very hospitality focused. We work with hotels, restaurants, resorts, private clubs, ski mountains, and others in the hospitality industry to help them with their international workers, both seasonal and year-round. I do a ton of speaking. I'm happy to answer every and all questions that you have. And I'm also the founder of two proprietary software. So one is what you see here on the bottom, which is Boom, which is free to all of our clients at Pabian Law, where it allows you access and transparency into the H-2B visa process. It's definitely been really nice for our clients to be able to see what's going on with their petitions and give them a little bit more ease in terms of the petition process. The other thing is SeasonalConnect, which my co-founder Carly Eglin is on this webinar as well, and she'll talk about SeasonalConnect towards the end of the webinar. We're partnering with FRLA on this, and we're so excited to share this as a real resource for staffing. So bear with us. We'll get to SeasonalConnect. Again, I'm so excited to share this with you. But first, let's talk about why you actually joined today, which is talking about foreign nationals. So I always start with this slide when I do webinars and when I do presentations. And the reason why is I think that it's really helpful for you to understand how difficult it can be to employ a foreign national and how limited the options are. So essentially, and when I say essentially, I actually should say in reality, there's only three options available to you as a hospitality organization when you're looking to employ foreign nationals. You have the H-2B seasonal visa and the J-1 trainee visa, both of which we're going to spend time talking about in substance today. And then you have all these year-round options and green cards. Now, when I'm talking about this for a hospitality organization, in reality, year-round visas have gotten very, 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 very difficult to procure. The year-round visa options, in my opinion, were created for organizations like Apple and Microsoft and other tech companies, and as well as hospitals and engineering, to bring their talent to the United States. It wasn't made for hourly workers. So when our clients reach out to us about year-round options, at this point, we actually oftentimes push them towards green cards because it's actually strangely weirder to apply for permanent residency for a green card rather than for a year-round visa. That being said, you still need to keep the person here while the green card application is going through, because a green card application doesn't provide anyone any lawful status here. And that's where ultimately things lead back to the H-2B visa. So what a lot of our clients have done now is they'll bring people over on an H-2B visa, use different tactics to keep that person here while the green card application is going on, and then apply for the green card. I'm not going to cover year-round options in more substance than what I just did today, but I'm happy to talk to any of you about that afterwards. And again, my contact information I'll put up at the end. But why I'm showing you this is as I'm talking about H-2Bs and J-1s and the pros and frankly the cons of both, I think it's just really helpful to understand that that's what's out there. That's what you're left with if you're turning to foreign nationals. And I think we can all agree right now the U.S. workers just aren't coming out and aren't applying. I heard a story from one of our clients the other day that a McDonald's, I think it was in somewhere middle of the United States, was offering people $50 just to show up for an interview. So that is where we are, and I know I'm preaching to the choir. So let's talk in substance about H-2Bs and J-1s. So I'm going to start with H-2Bs. And frankly, the reason why I'm starting with H-2Bs is I think for the vast majority of you, the J-1 visa isn't a true staffing option. It's not a true staffing solution, I should say. So as I'm talking about H-2Bs, just keep it in the back of your head that this is really where this could help you as a Florida organization in terms of being able to employ foreign nationals. So the H-2B visa is a seasonal visa. You can get it for up to 10 months of the year, but it's always going to mirror, or it's always going to be applicable towards the times that your organization is busiest. The government's going to want to see that your profits, your revenue and expenses, as well as your staffing goes up during the time that you apply. So let's say that you're in Southern Florida and you're busiest from October through end of May every year. That's how long you should apply for the H-2B visa. But if you're in other parts of Florida, the Keys, other areas where you might have a longer season, you can apply up for 10 months, but you're going to have to prove it that you have the seasonal need. As I mentioned already, it's one of the only options out there. And frankly, for Florida organizations, I think it really is, frankly, the only visa option out there. Now, you have to apply every year. So you do have to put this in your budget every year, and you're going to have to go through the workflow process every year, which, that's one of the cons, but it can also be one of the pros because it also allows you to tweak things year to year. So every year you can take a look at what your staffing needs are. You can change positions. Maybe one year you apply for dishwashers and bussers. The next year you might need servers and line cooks, and you can make that change. You can change how many people you apply for. You can tweak the dates and so on. So there are some benefits to applying annually. You set the requirements of the position, which is very unique in US immigration law. So you can say that you only want a server that has high-end experience if your restaurant is a high-end location. And then you can either bring workers from inside the US, where maybe they're transferring from an opposite season organization. Florida is an interesting state because you actually have both seasons in the state of Florida, right? In the Panhandle and in northern Florida, your summer season. In southern Florida, your winter, and people could transfer back and forth between seasons between those locations. Or you could bring people in from outside the country. And there's a lot of countries that are eligible. That being said, Jamaica, Mexico, Eastern Europe, UK, Ireland, South Africa, and Philippines, I'd say, are the most popular to bring people in from. Now, one other thing on the H-2B to contrast this with the J-1 and kind of transition to this slide is the H-2B is really designed as a work visa. It's designed for hourly workers to come in and work seasonally for an employer. They come back year to year. You usually get higher level people because they're not students. They're people that usually come with experience. On the other side of that, you have the J-1. The J-1 visa was designed as an interim visa. And what the rationale behind this is that a person graduates from some sort of university or college program. They've learned maybe hospitality, maybe that's what they studied in college. And then they're coming to the United States to further their learning through some sort of work, as well as learn the US culture so that they can go back and be essentially an advocate, an ambassador of how great the United States is. That's the rationale behind the J-1. Why I went into that detail is to understand this program, you're going to oftentimes be the first job for these people. And also, it's very, very difficult to bring someone back in subsequent years on a J-1 because it's really a student visa. You might be able to bring them back on an H-2B, but it's very hard to bring them back J-1 to J-1. Now, within the hospitality industry, there's two types of J1 visas out there. The J1 visa as a whole is weird. There's all these different offshoots of it that range from an au pair to a camp counselor to even a foreign medical school graduate. But within the hospitality industry itself, there's two subcategories that apply. You have the intern category, which some of you might see or some of you might utilize. It's like a 12 to 18 month J1. Which sounds great on its face. What's difficult about that is that it really, to me, is a management training tool for your current managers, because the worker has to transfer between departments every 3 months as a learning opportunity. As a business owner myself, I think transitioning people every 3 months, it can be harder than it is a benefit, but it can be great to get some great workers and some culture involved. But to me, that's not a real staffing solution when you really need people. Now, the summer work and travel program, that's one subcategory. Summer work and travel can be great as a staffing solution, but some of the limitations are that you can only get the people for up to 4 months, and oftentimes it's going to be during the height of your season, which sounds great on paper, but what I hear from a lot of clients historically is, especially for the summer season, they'll come when the college kids are home. And so it doesn't solve the issue of the bookends of the season, the spring and fall for them. The other thing with summer work and travel that's hard for Florida is it could be a great resource for northern Florida. For southern Florida, where you have the winter season, summer work and travel can be difficult because most countries operate on the same school year as the United States. So there are summer work and travel people available in the winter, but they're far and few between. Where I often see them is at ski mountains, and I don't see them very often in Florida. The J1 visa is administered by the State Department, and it goes through these third-party agencies that are responsible for it. What's nice about the J1 visa is the fees are paid for by the foreign national, whereas with the H-2B, it's a cost to the employer. It's a cost to the organization. Sometimes I call the J1 like visa light, like it's kind of a good entry point into visas, but it doesn't always solve what you need. Okay, let's talk through the H-2B process itself. So this might be one of the most important slides in the entire deck if you're considering doing H-2Bs for the first time. So if you're a winter season property, and I'm going backwards, I'm looking at the right side first. If you're a winter season property, basically October, November, December, January start dates, we start those petitions in the spring. Those are the petitions that we're currently working on at my office. We started them April 1st. If you still want to move forward, we could still do it, but the clock is literally ticking and you should move forward now. That's, again, one of the most important things I'm going to say today is if you're a winter season organization interested in H-2Bs, reach out to me today or to your provider today to just understand if it's right for you. The longer you wait, the less likely you're going to be able to move forward. For summer season, we start those September 15th of every year. So mark your calendar. That's the date that we move forward at our office. We start a little bit early on the summer side. Frankly, that's a little bit early, but it works well for us. One thing I just wanted to mention is Florida is an interesting state, to say the least. Again, it's near and dear to my heart. I'm saying that in a loving way, but you're a state that has both seasons. And on top of that, in the middle and the bottom of the state, meaning like Central Florida and in the Keys, there could be some really strong arguments that you're year-round in nature. That is important to talk about because one of the things that I have to talk through with organizations when they first reach out is, I think a lot of hospitality organizations think, hey, I'm a hospitality organization, I qualify for H-2Bs. And one of the things that I always have to talk through with every client, with every interested organization is, just because you're a hospitality organization doesn't mean that you qualify. Instead, we have to make sure that we can prove seasonality. So I will tell you, in the Keys, a lot of our clients kind of do November through the end of July or the end of August. That's kind of the Florida Keys season. If you're in Central Florida, even Orlando, like theme park area, we might still be able to show it, but it's a conversation that needs to be had. That being said, if I were standing in front of you, I could use my finger. I'm sure there's a way to do this on this webinar platform, but I'm not going to even try. But what I will tell you is, if you're north of Jacksonville through the Panhandle, what I have found is those are summer season organizations that usually have April 1st start dates. I know a lot of you would prefer to start in March or even February just because of winter break, but for right now, that's not possible due to the cap, and I will talk about the cap in a few slides. In southern Florida, what I found is south of Sarasota, on the west coast, wrapping down through the Keys and back up through probably like Vero, is winter. And then everywhere else in Florida is kind of a conversation. I will say we do work with some organizations in Central Florida that do have winter season, but I think the closer you get to Orlando and Kissimmee and that area, as well as Tampa and that side, basically the closer you are to I-4, the more of a conversation that needs to be had to make sure that we'd be able to prove seasonality. So I don't want to go through this slide in too much detail, but I wanted to just show you one thing. So this is kind of the main steps in the H-2B visa process. What I wanted to show you is why we have to start so early. So if you look at the bottom and you go to kind of right in the middle where it says 3 months from start, and you look up to where it says file application with the US Department of Labor, in 2015, and I'm saying that date because there might be some people that are used to filing H-2B visas prior to then. In 2015, the regulations were changed and it basically overhauled. And one of the biggest changes they made is that we now have to file that application with the Department of Labor in a window of 2 weeks, which falls between 90 to 75 days before your start date. Okay, so basically 3 months before your start date, we have to file that application. That period of time, we cannot move. And in order to file, we actually have to have this prevailing wage application back from the Department of Labor. What I'm trying to say to you is that under these 2015 regulations, it's very difficult to catch organizations up if they start late, and sometimes it's literally impossible. But that's why we start so early, and that's why you really need to be thinking 6 months ahead if you're interested in H-2Bs. These are the popular positions that we're finding right now, kind of looking at some of the trends. Back of house, we're seeing cooks and dishwashers. Front of house, we're seeing servers, busser runners, even hosts. We're seeing a ton of housekeepers. Front desk is one of the big new ones that I'd say over the last few years. Grounds, maintenance engineering, retail, and cashiers. These are what we're seeing as really popular ones. One thing just to mention is you can apply for whatever you want. We definitely have some clients that apply for some weird jobs because they have some unique ones at their properties. As long as you're seasonal, you can apply for any job that you need. So don't feel like you're stuck in having this unique role at your organization and not being able to apply for H-2Bs. One of the myths that I've seen time and again is organizations thinking that they're too small to pursue H-2Bs. I definitely do not think that's accurate. We have some very small sized clients that use H-2Bs and use them to get 2 to 3 people. We also have some very large ones that use it to get hundreds. What I've seen is for hotels, oftentimes they can make it work. I think restaurants sometimes struggle a little bit with the cost. When you're looking at cost, you're looking at about, like, I'm rounding completely right now, but $6,500 to $7,500 for the petition costs per job category. But then you have to pay for travel, and so that's where it can add up if you're not careful. So, but that being said, if this is something that you need to fill some positions, it doesn't matter how big you are. So, pausing for 1 second, up until now, I've been kind of giving you the background, and I think that what you've seen me say is that J1s can be a decent source potentially, especially if you're in the summer season of Florida. But H-2Bs are really the solution if you need foreign nationals to fill your roles. And I've kind of painted, frankly, a rosy picture. If the issue is, and talking through some of the not so rosy side, is this numerical cap. If this issue gets solved, to me, H-2Bs become a budget issue for every hospitality organization in the country. But for right now, this is a real problem, especially for summer season organizations. So this is what's going on. The H-2B visas in the 1990s, going back, a very long time now. In the 1990s, Congress arbitrarily came up with this number of 66,000 H-2B visas available during the entire year. They use their calendar year, so the government calendar year starts on October 1st, and they split the 66,000 in half. So from October 1st until March 31st, 33,000 H-2B visas are available. And then from April 1st to September 30th, the other 33,000 are available. The 33,000 every 6 months does not move. It's not based on any sort of unemployment rates. It's not based on any economic categories or data. It's just a fixed number that is absurd. And it's a real problem. So the other issue that happened is about 5-6 years ago, there used to be this thing called the returning worker exemption. It was a rule that said that anyone that held an H-2B visa in one of the past 3 years didn't count against the 66,000 cap. Congress very stupidly let this exception expire and immediately it created this cap issue. If you were hearing me do this presentation in 2015, I would not have even mentioned this cap because the cap was irrelevant. But now, frankly, it's one of the biggest issues that we have to deal with. Now, one thing that's extremely important to understand about the cap is it only applies to people coming in from outside the country or those switching from other visa categories. So if someone's in the United States trying to switch from a J1 to an H-2B, this would affect them. But if they're already in the United States on an H-2B visa, working in the opposite season, and they're looking to transfer to your property while staying inside the country, they're exempt from the cap. You could care less if and when the cap is hit. So these in-country transfers extensions can be really helpful to navigate the cap. Now, there's a lot of questions that are going on right now with the cap. Now, for summer season, okay, so if you have a start date April, May, June, the cap not only gets hit on the first day, which is April 1st, but they do a random lottery because the supply is so insufficient against the demand. The chances in the lottery are about 50-55% over the last couple of years. So for summer season, we know the cap is getting hit the first day. For winter season, the cap takes longer to be hit because nationally, there's a lot less winter season organizations in the United States than there are summer. Almost all industries and almost all utilizers of the program are summer season. So for those of you in Southern Florida that feel like there's a resort or a hotel or a country club or a restaurant every two inches, you're in the minority in terms of your season in the country overall. It's basically you, Southern Arizona, and ski country that makes up winter. So the question that we have to ask every year, though, is when will the winter season cap be reached? And last year was strange. Despite COVID and despite, I think, a lot of organizations, especially the conference hotels, taking a step back from the program for a year, the cap was hit earlier than ever. And it was basically hit right after December 15th start dates. So this is something that we're watching really closely this year, especially as I think more and more organizations are looking at H-2Bs. I've never seen the kind of demand we're seeing for winter season H-2Bs this year. And I've also never seen the demand that's coming for summer season, for summer 2022. But what I'd say is if you have an October, November start date, you should be just fine. I'd start getting nervous with organizations that have December start dates. And so that's something that we're really talking with clients about and making sure that they go into this with eyes wide open. Now, there's a lot of discussion about cap reform every year around this time when the summer season organizations are struggling so much with workers and they can't get all their H-2Bs. I keep hearing that it might be coming. It's so difficult because it's a bipartisan issue. H-2Bs are strange. Usually immigration is very much split along red and blue, right? Usually it's pro-immigration blue, anti-immigration red, and I'm obviously generalizing. H-2B doesn't fall that way. H-2B has bipartisan support as well as bipartisan opposition from both red and blue, because there are H-2B organizations that are very heavy in some red states, which leads to support, but then there are a lot of labor unions against H-2Bs in blue states, which causes just headaches because in some ways it would be easier if it's split along party lines. So we'll see about cap reform. I will tell you that there is a lot of understanding, I'd say more than ever, that it's a real problem, which I think is good news. One thing that's starting to gain a little bit of traction is potentially having landscaping, which currently falls under H-2Bs, move over to the H-2A agricultural visa. This would be huge. Landscaping is the biggest utilizer of H-2Bs. So if landscaping went to the H-2A category, it would free up so many visas and would potentially solve the problem. All that being said, the government did increase the amount of H-2B visas this year. They increased it by about 20,000. We're just waiting for those to become available. But for those of you that have filed for H-2Bs and missed the lot and didn't do well in the lottery, you might be able to apply this year. It's too late to start the process for summer 2021, but if you already have an approval from the U.S. Department of Labor, a certification from them, you might be able to file hopefully in the month of May. Well, we'll see. We're watching that carefully. Now, just to talk about in-country transfers, again, this is a really good avenue to look at to avoid the cap entirely. A couple of things you should know about it. Number one is a worker can only stay in the country for 3 years continuously. After the 3 years, he or she has to go home for 3 months, and then it resets that 3-year clock, and they can come back for another 3-year period. So 3 years in, 3 years out. Sorry, 3 years in, 3 months out. 3 years in, 3 months out. Now, during that 3-year period, they can't stay with one organization. Again, the H-2B is a seasonal visa. So what happens instead is they're moving back and forth between properties. Again, north, south, or sorry, I shouldn't say north, south, winter, summer, winter, summer. While they're moving, they need to keep their immigration status active. And the way that happens is that the organizations that they're working for need to go through the H-2B process. Now, if you do a transfer, you still have to go through that long process. And you need to apply 6 months in advance. Only at the end does the person transfer. So in-country transfers are not a shortcut to getting approval. You still have to go through the long process. The other thing is, one of the best pieces of advice I can give you is really trying to partner with opposite season organizations whose dates work well with yours. So let's say that you're in Southern Florida and your dates go all the way, and you need people all the way through the end of May. You don't necessarily want to partner with a hotel in the Panhandle that needs people April 1st, because in April and May, the two of you are going to be fighting for the worker, and the worker can't be in 2 spots at once. So really try to pay attention to where the workers are going, and potentially try to partner with organizations yourselves so that you can help facilitate those transfers to make sure that you don't have too much overlap. The other thing I will tell you, just as a practical tip, is definitely make sure that you educate your department heads on this, because a lot of times the workers are going to go to them, and if they bypass you, it can cause some real problems with the in-country transfers. The other thing just to highlight is the petition process comes before the workers and comes before the recruitment. So again, 6 months out, that's when we start the process. The recruitment happens probably closer to 3 months out from your start date. And so I always describe the H-2B process overall as an upside down funnel. And as you go, it just keeps expanding in terms of how much information the government needs. It's all about at first just trying to figure out what jobs you need at your property or properties. And then from there, it keeps growing. The people you don't need to know when you start, but do not wait to know who the people are to start the process. At that point, it's probably going to be too late. So in terms of understanding where we are today, we're in an interesting point right now, because I think we're on the right track, but especially for J1s, we're not there yet. The J1 visa was the first visa that I saw the government really pull people back at the start of COVID. Again, it's students, it's governed by the State Department. I think to their credit, they saw what was happening and said, we do not want these students here. We need to get them home safely. Now, there were also plenty of other ones that got stuck here. And you might be at a property where you're saying, oh my God, that was the worst thing ever. We couldn't get them home, and they were stuck in employee housing, and it was rough. But it's been a long time since J1s were here in big numbers. Like, we're talking now 15 months. What I'm seeing is the program is alive and well. This was something that the Trump administration did not like J1s, and it was one of the things that they were really pushing against. The Biden administration, I don't think they care about J1s. I don't think they have a strong opinion one way or the other. But what I'm hearing from our clients on the ground is that they're not getting resumes right now. They're not seeing the workers. And so if you're a summer season organization that needs workers, if what I'm hearing from clients is accurate, which I think it is, because I'm hearing it in such large numbers, it seems like the J1 program is going to be rebuilding itself for probably 6 to 12 months. I think it's going to come back, and I think it's going to be a resource again. But I think that you're probably looking at a little bit of delay of being able to use them. And I know that's frustrating because so many organizations are terrified about the coming summer with how busy they're going to be. But it doesn't seem like J1s is a real large-scale opportunity heading into this summer. In terms of H2Bs, things I'd say are pretty good. The petitions are definitely very predictable right now with the agencies involved, which is Department of Labor and U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services. At one point during the pandemic, they added 2 weeks to this recruitment period that's part of the application. That went away. And on top of that, the travel restrictions wonderfully are finally easing. The Trump travel ban expired on March 31st, and the Biden administration did not extend it, so people are free to come in on H2Bs and J1s again. The Biden administration last week said that they're going to get rid of a lot of the widespread like regional travel bans. So like right now in Europe, there's an area called the Shenzhen area. The Trump administration put this ban on people traveling from the Shenzhen area if they've been there in the last 2 weeks. Biden's letting that go. What we're going to see now is these very specific travel bans due to COVID, like what we're seeing with India right now. But a lot of the travel restrictions are gone or are going away very shortly. In addition to that, Filipino workers are back. With H2Bs, the workers have to be from a country on an eligible country list. Philippines was not on the list for 2 years. They're finally back. And I think we're going to see audits going down. I think that a lot of the immigration enforcement mechanisms are going to start easing up a lot. Now, all that being said, I think it's just helpful to understand how bad 2020 was from an immigration standpoint. So obviously we had COVID. We've had 2 straight years of unpredictable seasons. And I think that thankfully in hospitality for so many of you, you actually were so much more successful than you were expecting at the outset of the pandemic. But it's been tough, and I think that now you have to deal with a lot of new expectations and a lot of heightened expectations of your guests and customers. Forced closures and restrictions on our side, we were literally seeing weekly changes to immigration rules and regulations. It was brutal. A lot of anti-immigration policies were being pushed through. And it all culminated with the Trump administration turning off the ability of H2B and J1 workers to enter the country through March of 2021. So again, it expired and there were some workarounds, but I remember that day very well when we were like, oh no. A lot of travel nightmares and just fatigue overall. But despite all of this, I think that purely from an H2B standpoint, we're heading back to this time of normal now. So again, President Trump's proclamation expired on March 31st. President Biden is very immigration friendly. His platform has been immigration friendly. It was one of the first things he did when he took office, was some very immigration friendly approaches. His travel bans, he's already shown this now, are going to be based off of public health concerns, not off of an immigration agenda. Embassy and consulate closures and delays are going to, I think, really start to ease up as COVID eases up. I think he's also going to staff the agencies properly, which will really help with speeding up processing times at the agencies and at the consulates. I think audits are going to be a lot more predictable. And I don't think we're going to see these bans on people coming from certain countries unless there's a public health emergency like what's happening in India right now, which means that you can bring in out-of-country workers again. Which is huge, because last year the only way around the presidential proclamation was doing in-country transfers. Normal recruiting period, which means that the approvals are going to be earlier. And one of the big things is that the in-country worker pool, if you decide to do in-country, is going back to what it was, because we're seeing, starting with this upcoming summer 2021, organizations were applying like they did in the past and then adding positions as well, meaning that the pool of workers should be back to what it was. Now, in terms of questions that we're getting, and I think that these are important questions to just talk through, I am getting these questions constantly. And so the questions are, what if we didn't file H2B petitions last season? What if we didn't utilize J1 visa holders last season? What if we applied for less people on our petitions? What if we applied for different positions? What if our revenue, our expenses, and staffing numbers were strange in 2020? A lot of people didn't leave, right? People couldn't travel. So some of the times that you would say were your off times, you were busier than normal. Or maybe people were delayed in getting to you. So some of the times that usually we're busy, we're a little bit slower. And so what do we do about that? What if heading into next season, we want to increase the number of H2B workers, knowing what the new demand will be and knowing that people want to travel again? What if we want to add positions based on that? And my answer to all of this is you should do whatever you need from your business standpoint, as long as you can explain it. So I'm a big believer in you need to let your business drive the immigration train, not immigration drive the business. But you always need to make sure you explain. And as long as you can explain all of this, you should be just fine. One of the things about COVID that's important to acknowledge is it's not like a hurricane in Florida that maybe not everyone knows about. And with COVID, it literally is a global pandemic. And so the officer that's reviewing your application knows what COVID is and is going to understand what happened as long as you take the time to explain it. So my point here is do what you need to do to make sure that you're staffed. Don't worry about what happened over the last 12 to 18 months. Just make sure that you explain it. So as we're heading into the coming seasons, what's so crazy about all of this is that the coming seasons likely are going to be some of the busiest you've ever had. And combine that with the lack of US workers. I was talking to Ashley from the organization right before in the waiting room right before the webinar, and we were saying across every industry, no one can find workers. And what's terrifying about that to me is I've been working in hospitality so long that I remember when people were saying, you know, the problem with our workers is that they're going to construction jobs because they pay more, or they're going to manufacturing jobs because they pay more, or they're going to go drive for Uber or Lyft because they can set their own schedule and they don't want to work hard. Now those organizations can't find workers, the organizations that we're pulling from you. So if those organizations can't find workers, it terrifies me to think about what's going to happen in hospitality. And I know that's really seems like it's one of the biggest, if not the biggest issue right now for all of you. So with all of that, with the vaccine coming, I'm actually getting my second vaccine this afternoon, and I know my wife and I cannot wait to travel again. And so like we are customers, right? Like we're ready to come down to Florida. And so how are you going to handle that influx of guests and customers when you also have less workers? And so I think that's really where H2Bs could be a saving grace for a lot of you. That being said, also during the pandemic, so many of you were so creative and you added things. I heard of some hotels where like they were doing Zoom culinary classes for people and keeping them connected. And now the guests want them to keep doing that. And it's things like that where you might need to actually staff up to accommodate some of these things that you were so creative with that your guests now might expect going forward. The danger of J1s, again, I think J1s are staying now. I used to think that the Trump administration was going to do away with it before he left office, but at this point, I don't think it's going away, but I think that the damage has been done that's going to hurt it for a while, and that takes away one of the only avenues with international staffing. So again, back to H2Bs. But again, more summer season organization move forward for summer 2022. I'm saying that as someone, we essentially have finished filing. All of our applications have now been approved. So, you know, I can say this where we're able to kind of look in the crystal ball 6 months ahead because we're always working that amount. But the in-country worker pool has definitely been replenished. So I guess one of my takeaways here is I really think H2Bs are here to help. It's definitely not the right fit for everyone, but it's worth exploring, especially because the in-country pool is so difficult. So far, what I've been talking about is what we do at Pabian Law, at my law firm. One of the things that Carly and I flagged is that there's a real opportunity to be able to help a lot of you, a lot more than just through international workers. So we are rolling out SeasonalConnect. We are partnering with FRLA. Dan and his team have been incredible at supporting this, and you're going to be hearing a lot more about this through the organization. But Carly, do you want to talk a bit about what people can expect with this?
Absolutely. Thank you, Keith, and hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us today. So as Keith mentioned, we continue to hear from our clients and the members of organizations like FRLA that staffing is the biggest issue in the industry right now, and we have the solution. So we are building an online platform called SeasonalConnect, as Keith mentioned, which will help with seasonal staffing needs. Our soft launch is going to be in mid-July, and in order to beta test and ensure that the software is ready for our hard launch, which will be in October, We are going to limit signups to 100 winter season organizations and 100 summer season organizations. Again, just to ensure that the software is fully ready for the hard launch in October. So you're probably wondering what SeasonalConnect does. There are 5 main things that SeasonalConnect does, including an employer search, which allows you to use over 100 search criteria to look for organizations that are opposite season recruiting partners. So you can make those in-country transfers that Keith was referring to earlier, or even look for same season organizations for networking, for advice, and just really having a buddy that's kind of in it with you. The second thing that it does is it allows you to search for seasonal workers, again, using a wide variety of search criteria. And that way you can search and locate seasonal workers to fill those seasonal positions. It also includes the ability to post any seasonal positions on your employer profile within the platform, and seasonal workers can apply directly within the platform as well. The third thing that it does is it allows you to search for housing for your seasonal workers. We hear often that this is difficult to find if your organization does not have housing of its own. The fourth thing that it does is it allows you to find and search for daily transportation options to get your seasonal workers to and from their seasonal jobs. And then the biggest thing that SeasonalConnect does is it creates a community for the seasonal organizations or organizations that need to staff seasonally. So included in that is a message board where you'll be able to create posts to share solutions you may have found or ask for help or advice if you are facing some challenges of a seasonal nature. That message board is going to be able to be filtered by region, by industry type, by organization type, and many other different filters as well. We're also going to be doing many roundtables, educational events like webinars, and hopefully when COVID-19 is fully resolved, in-person events as well. And then finally, at Pabian Law, we do a weekly email called our Client Connector, where organizations can post needs that they have for either workers that are looking for their next seasonal employment, that are leaving their organization, or positions that they're looking to fill. And it's been a great resource to allow organizations to make those in-country recruiting partner relationships. And that will be a part of SeasonalConnect as well. And we're going to build that up, build that out in an even more robust way so that it's helpful to you in finding those partnerships.
Yeah, and we're so excited to bring this. It's going to be available to people that work with Pabian Law and those that don't. And really designed for organizations of all sizes, but really there to help you find both seasonal American workers as well as international. So you'll be hearing more about this. Again, we're doing so much with FRLA on this, but we wanted to make you aware of it now as we're starting to sign up users in the month of May. So if you're interested in learning more about SeasonalConnect, you can definitely contact me. My information is right there. If you're interested in H-2Bs, especially winter season, please reach out to me or to your provider as soon as possible so that you don't miss the opportunity. But with that, we are happy to answer every and all questions that you have, and we definitely left plenty of time to answer them. So I see there's already one question in the question box, and just feel free to write them in. We will do our best to answer everything you have.
So that first question, someone said, you're spot on. People simply do not want to work even for livable wages at $15 an hour. But are any of these programs right for restaurants that need year-round employees?
No, unfortunately. So Chip, that is a great question. You know, it's interesting. One of the things that Biden actually, it was interesting to see this in his, when he was candidate Biden instead of President Biden. On his campaign website, he actually talked about the idea of a guest worker program that would, I think, talk to what I think you're referring to. What you're describing doesn't exist, and it's a real problem in the immigration laws because it's needed, frankly, and it's going to be needed more and more now. The issue is that if for hourly work, it really, you're left with the H-2B program. Now, you can look at potentially applying for a 10-month season, but that could actually be disruptive, right? If everyone's here for 10 months, what do you do about the 2 months they're not here? So Chip, if you want to reach out to me, I'm happy to talk that through with you. But the first question I'm going to ask you is, what are your slowest months? And could you do without the workers during those months? So it's a great question. It's a real problem in the immigration laws.
Great question. Kate Farmer is asking, what happens if an H-2B team member has performance or behavioral issues?
So great question. So it happens. I'd like to think it doesn't happen a ton because they know that their visa is tied to you. If you are never tied to a worker, and vice versa, the worker's never tied to you. It doesn't create this form of slavery. Instead, a worker could leave at any time. But what's good about H-2Bs is that it's very difficult for them to just go to another organization down the street, because that organization would have had to start the process 6 months prior. If you're having issues on your end, you can terminate them, you can fire them. It's just that you would have to pay for their flight home, but you're never stuck with them for the whole season.
Great question. Wen is asking, is it possible to hire a chef from China?
Taiwan, yes. Mainland China, no for H-2Bs. When we could look at other visa types for a chef and what that person's qualifications are, but mainland China is not on the eligible country list for H-2Bs. If they're in Taiwan, Taiwan is on the list, but that we might have to look at a different visa type, and it might not be possible.
Another great question. Robin is asking, what is Pabian Boom?
So Pabian Boom is the first proprietary software that we created. It is, what we do with Pabian Boom is we created this tool that allows us to, I think, provide incredible service and results on our side internally. So we use it internally for us. Externally, all of our clients at Pabian Law for free get access to Pabian Boom, where they have their own portal and they can follow along with what we're doing with the petition, as well as they have a document library. They can upload documents for in-country workers and so on. So it's a tool for doing H-2B petitions that we utilize for all of our Pabian Law clients. So it's it's really cool. But it's what I would say is it goes hand in hand with Pabian Law on the H-2B side, whereas SeasonalConnect is a completely separate venture, separate opportunity that's open to Pabian Law and non-Pabian Law clients. Thanks for asking that.
It looks like that may be our last question. If anyone has any more questions, please feel free to enter them into the chat now.
Hey, Ashley.
Hi, Ashley.
Hi. I don't see any more questions coming in. I can share, like we mentioned earlier, Keith's information with everybody after the webinar and the webinar recording as well. So with that, Keith, Carly, do you have any closing remarks that you'd like to wrap up with?
Thank you so much for having us. It really, we love talking to your group. One thing I will say is FRLA, it really does mean a lot to me personally. Even if you don't ever utilize a single H-2B visa, I'm happy to be a resource and sounding board for any of you. So, if any of you just have any questions or want to run anything by me, please reach out. I'm always happy to discuss and just tell you if I'll be very blatantly honest if I think it's not a great idea, but please reach out if you have any questions at all. We definitely are very much in the staffing fight, just in a different way. But we know that we are seeing the pain, and we're here to help as much as we can.
Well, thank you both very much. Have a good day, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, too. Have a great day.
Bye.